Okay, wow. I mean, there's so many. The show is just so good at like keeping pretty engaging like plot threads, like character arcs going kind of at all times, and balancing them within each episode.
Hmm.
Um, I think we'll start with before we get into maybe some of the more eventful stuff this episode, we'll start with the little Donald plot line going on. Um, I truly have no idea where it's going, but it's very obvious. It's kind of Blade Runner, Westworldy. Donald finally he just confronts Cecil, and Cecil doesn't try to hide the fact that I guess they're just cloning him. I think this is or like making like a robot duplicate.
Yeah.
Um, I think is the Donald that dies in at the end of season one. Is that implied to be like the real Donald?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
And then I think we just are left with his brain. I think Donald is a lot smarter than Cecil thinks he is.
Yeah.
I have not been a big fan of Cecil lately. I
Mm,
know I know he has a big job and I know he is a smart man, but can the man please have some empathy?
yeah. He is kind of yeah. He's kind of a hard ass, but I suppose when you're like trying to protect the Earth, kind of make some tough calls.
I guess.
But he poses a an interesting question that I was thinking about during and after the episode. Because again, he doesn't really try to hide the fact that that's what he's been doing.
Mhm.
And he says something like, would you rather be dead? Um, and I thought this was like a really interesting topic because obviously in this world and specifically in Cecil and Donald's line of work, um, their lives are constantly at risk, and obviously Donald sacrifices himself at the end of season one,
Mhm.
and then Cecil brings him back, or not the real Donald, but essentially it's Donald with the same like consciousness or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. So, what do you think about the idea of like if you're in this line of work, would you rather just straight up die, or would you rather maybe have the knowledge, or maybe not, like how Donald at first
Mm.
didn't know that he never died?
Yeah.
I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, you brought up a really interesting point where Donald sacrificed himself in the season one finale. And so I wonder if in those moments when Donald sacrificed himself, if he kind of accepted his fate.
Mhm.
If he was like, okay, you know what? Like I know what's about to happen. He had this brief moment of reflection. He was like, I know I'm gonna die. Like it's okay.
Yeah.
So it kind of brings that to question too. Like, what if Donald was ready to not come back?
Right.
But
I
going to
suppose
you go.
I was just gonna say I suppose Omni-Man had basically had like crushed his spine or something.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
quality of life after that, even though he survived, maybe wouldn't have been that great.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. I feel bad for Donald. But the question you ask is also a really interesting one. I think I think it would how I would want it to happen for me is I would want to know that we have this
Yeah.
robot brain thing
Yeah.
and that it is a possibility and to be presented with the possibility and be like, hey, like this is a crazy line of work we're in. You could die at any moment. Like we're literally dealing with superheroes and super villains. But like if you were to die, like would you want to become brought back by this
Mm.
thing?
Mhm.
I would want to know about it first. I would have similar feelings that Donald has right now if I was just brought back and not told about it. Like it is kind of crazy that Cecil didn't tell him at first, but then when Donald
Yeah,
finally figured it out, he was like, "Okay, yeah, I'll tell you." So
right,
it's just
right.
interesting. It's interesting. What would you want? What is your ideal situation?
Yeah, I mean, I think like if I were Donald in this situation, like no doubt you would have a bit of this existential crisis if I think Cecil kind of points that out. Like, no doubt you would have this existential crisis if you found this information out. Like no doubt you would be like kind of confused and
Hmm.
angry. Um, and so I don't know. I think even in this crazy world, like I think that would still be a hard thing to come to grips with and then still kind of be expected to like go to work and do your
Yeah.
job. Um, yeah, so I could see like not being brought back as an I that could be ideal, but I think if you were brought back, like would you want to know? I don't know. I'd be curious to see like if this version of Donald is killed again, whether it's intentionally like by Cecil or it's by an external threat, and if it just repeats the process. Um, I
Hmm.
imagine Cecil would get sick of having to go through these hoops every time, though.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I forgot. I was going to say something, but I forgot.
That's okay. If you think of it, we can come back to it.
Cool.
Um, but
Did you have
yeah.
any other favorite moments?
Let's see. Honestly, I mean, I think there's a great there's a lot of like great just interactions between Mark and his mom.
Hmm.
Um and who like Debbie is such a well-rounded character. Um which I feel like is not something, for like the mom of a superhero. It's not something you see usually in like a DC or Marvel property where that character is just as nuanced and gets just as much um like prominent narrative time as like the lead heroes.
Hmm.
So I think that's just it's really refreshing anytime we get to see her and her interactions with Mark. Um
Yeah.
and she's surprisingly chill. And she like has some she kind of points it out that she'd be watching over the kid that Omni-Man has with another woman. But then she
Yeah.
is surprisingly chill about it.
Yeah. She's such a great mom. I know, I think she just sees how much Mark cares about Oliver.
Mhm.
And so she like puts her feelings aside. And like I said in episode 0, I love how this series not only focuses on the superhero characters, but focuses on the non-superhero characters and how they're dealing with living in this world with Debbie and Donald and Cecil. I think it's so interesting and makes it so much more relatable in a way. We can just
Yeah,
draw, we can understand like where they're coming from, and I have no idea what I would do in these kind of situations, but it's nice to see like their point of view.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The show always feels kind of for as fantastical as it gets and silly as it gets, it does always feel pretty grounded. Especially for an animated show, which I like.
Hmm. Well, I guess we can jump into some of my favorite parts.
Yes.
My favorite scene was definitely when Adam, Eve, and Rexplode had their moment
Yeah.
together, or just Eve and Rex in this moment. I feel like it was so human, and really sweet. I love I've really come around to Rex. At first I was like, God, like this guy's really annoying. Um, he was like the
Yeah.
the staple douchebag character. Um, but now I really loved seeing him in this scene and kind of coming to her knowing that the Guardians of the Globe need her. And knowing that Eve needs them equally as much.
Mhm.
So yeah, I really, really loved that scene. I think it
Yeah.
shows a great character arc for the both of them. So I'm excited to see where they both go this season. For a while, Eve was stuck in like a really depressive state, and I felt really bad for her because I know how like freaking powerful and cool she is. So I'm really, really excited. And it was awesome seeing her use her powers this episode.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, Rex is, I think this is maybe the first time in the show so far that we've seen him actually be a bit more empathetic.
Hmm.
Not such a, you know, such a douchebag. Um, and also just the first time maybe where, it's his idea to recruit Eve. Um,
Yeah.
maybe his first like actual idea or just like general contribution, like a strategic contribution.
Yeah. I'm here for the Rex Explode redemption arc. Let's talk about Mark coming back to Earth and
Mm,
his interactions with Cecil and Amber. I thought those were really interesting.
yeah, I especially like the um when Cecil kind of teleports into the dorm hallway or whatever, and he's like, he's like, my team is gonna watch over Oliver. But Mark kind of just stands his ground. And I think Cecil kind of knows like he doesn't want to into any like conflict with Mark.
Hmm.
One, because he kind of needs him on the same side, but also because like Mark is just really powerful. Like who knows if Cecil could stop him or you know, it would be kind of difficult.
Yeah, I see where Cecil's coming from. I do. Um, I I am not an Amber fan. I'll say it.
Yeah,
I know some people may disagree. I'm sure not a lot do, though. I she's just like okay. Um,
yeah,
I thought it was so interesting. At one point, she was like, "Oh yeah, my uncle passed away." But
hmm,
she said it in such a weird way, and she was like, "But I got through it." I was like, "What? What kind of what?" It's a crazy thing to say about a family member passing away. I don't know. She's okay, I guess. We'll see where her character goes, but
yeah,
I thought it was really interesting when we jump from Mark telling Amber he has to go to space over the phone, and then we jump to Mark hugging Eve. So
yeah.
I think that implies a lot. And I feel like I already know the answer to this, Megan, but are you team Amber and Mark, or are you team Eve and Mark?
I think I've been team even Mark since like episode season one, episode one. I can't even remember what their first interaction is in the show, but yeah, I mean, how can you not ship them?
Yeah, I they would be the coolest couple ever. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, I don't know. Do you think the show is gonna go there eventually? Do you know?
I think so. I mean,
I hope
um,
so.
I imagine like again, I agree with you with Amber's that she's just kind of like boring. And it's not even fully because it's not really because she doesn't have powers. Like Debbie doesn't have powers, but Debbie's really interesting and just nuanced. But Amber just isn't really given like enough narrative prominence to really captivate me.
Mm-mm.
Eve is like the second or third biggest character on the show. Um, so yeah, I mean, I imagine Amber will probably be slowly phased out as the show progresses. I can't imagine like I don't know, maybe if the show runs for like 9 seasons and she's still like popping in. I don't know. We'll see. But I agree she's not every time she's on screen, I'm not exactly like hyped.